They thought they had wiped us out. That's the part that stings the most. Not the war, not the weapons, not even the betrayal. What cuts deepest is that they celebrated our extinction like it was some grand cosmic cleanup. Like we were vermin, a mess to be erased. But they were wrong. The Varn came first, sleek and quiet, all arrogance wrapped in pale metallic skin and fake diplomacy. Said they came in peace, said they wanted trade, said humans were promising but volatile. What they really wanted was Earth's core, not our resources, not our culture, just the molten heart beneath our feet. So they bled the planet dry while we smiled and shook hands and signed treaties that meant nothing. When Earth cracked, they left. When we screamed, they watched. Then came the rest, the Dravanti warlords, the Obsidians, the ones with no name. Parasites in polished ships, all of them descended like wolves on a carcass. They tore our colonies apart, city by city, orbit by orbit. Mars fell. Europa burned. Neptune's rings shattered. And when they reached the last human stronghold on Titan, they didn't even bother to ask for surrender. They just dropped fire. But you know what no one ever learns about humans until it's too late? We don't die easy. That last strike, Titan, it wasn't our end. It was our beginning. Some of us escaped, not many. Enough. We went dark, deep into systems they didn't chart, places they avoided because of radiation storms or gravity waves or ghosts. We rebuilt in silence. We trained without mercy. And over 2 long centuries, we became the one thing the galaxy never wanted us to be. Hunters. Now, I'm standing here on the bridge of a repurposed war cruiser. Patchwork hull hissing with ion scars, looking out at the first planet on the list. A Varn colony. Peaceful. Isolated. Arrogant. They prayed we wouldn't come. They built temples to the silence. They told their young that the human curse was just myth. Old fear. Galactic folklore. Their skies are clear now. But that's about to change. The ship's AI crackles over the intercom, voice sharp like broken glass. Target lock confirmed. Surface structures mapped. No active orbital defense. Planet name, Velthora. Varn population 900,000. I nod slowly, jaw tight. Wake them up. Below decks, the cryopods hiss open. Soldiers climb out, gritty, scarred, hungry. These aren't polished Federation troops. They're survivors. They grew up in hollow asteroids and melted ice caves. No sunlight, no laughter. Just drills and combat sims and the sound of dead Earth recordings playing lullabies through static. Some of them don't even remember Earth, but they remember what was done to us. One of the younger soldiers, tall, quiet, eyes like flint, adjusts his chest plate and speaks in a low, steady voice. They said we were gone. I look at him. Let's remind them we're not. The landing craft launch in silence, no anthem, no fanfare, just the soft thud of boots on steel and the creak of weapons checked one last time. As we descend into Velthora's atmosphere, the clouds part, revealing a shining capital of crystalline towers and flowing silver rivers. It's beautiful, in a way. Too bad we're here to bury it. The first strike hits their central power grid. One beam of concentrated energy, fired from orbit, and their lights go out. Panic blooms across their comm channels. No defenses, no warning, no understanding of what's happening. They scramble for answers. They don't know how to process the fact that humans are back. I step out of the landing craft into the smoke, weapon drawn. My boots hit their sacred ground like a war drum. Screams echo through the streets. And I don't feel a damn thing. Because this isn't about revenge anymore. This is about reminding the galaxy who we are. They can paint us as monsters. They can call us the mistake that crawled out of Earth's dirt. But they forgot one truth. You don't leave a species for dead. and expect them to stay buried. And as the Varn cry out in disbelief, as their temples fall and their leaders beg for mercy from a species they thought extinct, one message repeats across every hacked broadcast, every hijacked signal, every shattered transmission tower. We're human, we remember, and we're not done. You ever hear silence scream? That's what it sounded like when Velthora's towers fell. Not metal tearing, not engines howling, not even the sounds of the Varn civilians scattering like shattered glass. It was the silence, the kind that wraps around a city when the power dies, when the sky darkens with smoke, and when the only thing left to believe in is fear. Their fear, the kind they'd spent generations pretending didn't exist anymore, that they had outgrown, that they'd buried along with the last burning human city. But we didn't stay buried. We became the storm they used to scare their kids into obedience. And now? Now the storm had a name, and boots, and guns, and fire. I walked through the streets of Velthora with my squad, the white marble streets now smeared with ash and debris. The Varn built their colonies like museums, clean, polished, full of art and elegance, as if they were the enlightened ones, as if beauty gave them the right to kill with a smile and call it peacekeeping. But beauty doesn't stop a bullet. I glanced up at the high towers, where crystal glass used to catch sunlight like fire. Now they were blackened skeletons. The air smelled of ozone, plasma, and fear. "Command," I said into my comms. "Sector 12 cleared. No resistance. Locals are running, not fighting." The voice on the other end cracked with static. "Copy that. Similar reports across all sectors. They're not used to prey biting back." "Prey. That's what we were to them. That's what we'd always been. That was their first mistake. We moved through their central plaza next." It used to be a place of gatherings, festivals, rituals, art, their version of religion. Big spiral spires with glowing script, light shows that danced in the air. I'd seen it in our stolen files. All gone now, burned, smashed, covered in rubble. One of the Varn, older than the rest, tried to stop me as we passed a broken monument. His hands raised, no weapon, just wide, watery eyes and trembling fingers. He spoke in his language, some blend of hums and clicks, but I understood the message. "Please," he said. "We didn't do this. It wasn't us." I looked at him, really looked at him. His robes were still clean. He hadn't been in the fighting. Probably a scholar or a priest. Whatever passed for spiritual leaders in their culture. I lowered my rifle slightly. "You watched," I said. He flinched, maybe at my voice, maybe at the accusation. "You watched Earth break. You watched the Varn bleed us dry, steal our homes, poison our air, and you said nothing." He looked confused, scared. "We were told humans had perished, that the last colony had imploded. Nothing survived." I smiled. Cold. "Yeah. Funny how rumors work." He opened his mouth again, maybe to beg, maybe to pray. I shot him once, clean through the chest. "Don't pray to silence," I muttered, stepping over his body. "It doesn't answer back." Beside me, Tora, a squad leader from the Black Ember unit, let out a low whistle. "That one was old, probably harmless." "None of them are harmless," I said. "Harmless let the monsters through the front door." Tora didn't argue. She knew better. She was there when the moon base collapsed under Varn bombardment. She dragged her little sister's corpse out of the wreckage with her bare hands. We all had scars. Physical, emotional, deep. And now the galaxy would see what those scars had made us. As we pushed further into the city, resistance finally showed up. Small pockets of Varn security drones, sleek, insect-like things with silver claws and plasma stingers. Not real soldiers, just toys meant to make the population feel safe. But to humans like us, forged in the fire of survival, they were nothing more than practice targets. Tora took point, her weapon spitting bursts of purple plasma that melted through drone armor like butter. I moved left, flanking, sending EMP grenades into their midst. The drones sparked, twitched, and fell. 30 seconds. That's all it took to dismantle a defense grid they'd spent decades perfecting. "Weak," growled Marn, our heavy, big guy. Grew up in the mining shafts of Arc 9, where kids learned to shoot before they could walk straight. "If this is what they've got, the rest of the planet's gonna fall before sundown." "Don't get cocky," I warned. "Velthora's just the garden planet. Wait till we hit their military core." Marn grinned. "I hope they put up a fight." He wasn't the only one. Some of our crew didn't just want revenge. They wanted pain, for someone else to feel what we'd felt. And who could blame them? When Earth burned, we didn't get a warning. When our colonies fell, no one offered mercy. So why should we? We reached the central control tower by noon Standard Time. The city's heart, their command nexus. Varn leaders had already abandoned it, of course, rats fleeing a ship they thought would never sink. But the systems still worked, and that was what we needed. Tora hacked into the mainframe with a data spike. Her fingers moved fast over the interface, pulling maps, broadcasts, troop locations. The more we dug, the more sickening it became. "Look at this," she said, voice tight. "They've been monitoring us." On the screen, footage played. Grainy clips of asteroid bases, pirate intercepts, stolen human tech. They knew we'd survived. Maybe not all of us, but enough. They didn't tell the galaxy, they didn't warn anyone. They just watched. They waited. Cowards. "We should broadcast," Marn growled. "Let everyone see what we've become." Tora nodded. "I can hijack their signal grid. Beam it across the system, unfiltered." I looked at them both, then at the screen showing a city we had turned into ruin. "Do it." The signal lit up in minutes. Every screen, every ship, every colony linked to Velthora's system received our message, our faces, our fury, our truth. Tora stepped in front of the camera first, eyes burning. "This is the voice of the extinct. This is the fury of those left behind. We are the last sons and daughters of Earth, and we are not broken." Marn followed, slamming his fist into the table. "You took our home. Now we'll take yours." Then it was my turn. I stared into the lens. No theatrics, no threats, just one promise. You prayed we'd never come back. You hoped the silence meant peace, but peace built on bones is just a pause, and your pause is over. The feed cut, and the galaxy shuddered. We knew that message would echo far beyond Velthora, past the Varn, past the other species who sat in their crystal towers and laughed while we drowned. It would reach the Federation diplomats who looked away, the neutral systems who profited from our pain, the ones who forgot who we were. Humans were never the strongest, never the smartest, but we were always the ones who got back up. And this time, we were bringing hell with us. Later that night, we set up temporary command in the tower ruins. Fires still burned outside, but there were no more screams, just crackling static, the occasional drone popping as it short-circuited in the rubble, and the low hum of ships circling above. The soldiers were quiet. Not from guilt, from focus. This was just the beginning. Velthora wasn't the real target. It was a signal. I stood on the balcony, overlooking what was left of their city. Tora joined me, helmet off, face streaked with dust and blood. "You think they'll fight next time?" she asked. "They'll have to," I said, "because the next ones won't get a warning." She nodded slowly. "And when do we stop?" I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. Maybe when the last Varn War Council burns. Maybe when the galaxy says our name with fear again. Maybe never. The next planet didn't even make a sound. No alarms, no defenses, no comms chatter. Just silence, as if the whole world held its breath the moment our ships dropped out of FTL. They knew. The broadcast from Velthora had done its job. Every system with a Varn settlement had seen what we did, and every leader who thought humans were just a footnote in their star charts now had to rewrite their nightmares. This one was called Lurexis 3, Mining Hub, rich in core elements, the kind you don't leave undefended if you expect to hold power. But the Varn weren't planning to defend it, not anymore. "Evacuation logs confirm it," Tora said from the ops deck, eyes glued to the feed. "They bailed 3 hours before we arrived. Clean jump signatures, no intercept. Cowards didn't even try to fight." "Where'd they go?" I asked. "Deep space, no coordinates listed, most likely regrouping." Or hiding. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the black surface of Lurexis rotate beneath us like a dying coal. The planet was covered in scars. Pits, drills, tunnels that stretched miles deep. The Varn hadn't colonized it for beauty, just for hunger, strip mining without mercy. Sound familiar? Marn walked up behind us, helmet under his arm, chewing on a protein stick like it was a cigar. "They left all their gear behind. Big mistake." He wasn't wrong. The orbital platforms were still active. The refineries still online. They hadn't had time to wipe the systems. And when you give humans access to your toys, we take them apart and turn them into weapons. "Full salvage operation," I ordered. "Scrub the logs. Strip their tech. I want everything that could help us strike harder and faster." And just like that, we started taking their world without firing a shot. Funny thing about war, it's not always about bullets. Sometimes it's about what you deny the enemy. They took Earth. We took their future. Tora's team cracked into their military database first, layer after layer of encrypted garbage until finally something useful floated up. Troop deployments, base locations, even movement reports from Varn High Command. And deep in those files, marked with red tags and priority codes, were names of planets humans were never supposed to know about. "What's this?" I asked, staring at the hologram. A series of glowing dots pulsed in a circular formation, far from any major trade route or galactic authority zone. Tora zoomed in, squinting. "They called it the Nidus Cluster, Hidden Worlds, Black Sites. Looks like they kept prisoners there." "Prisoners? Not Varn," she said quietly. "Us." We all stood still. Marn leaned in, eyes narrowing. "You telling me there are humans still alive out there?" "Looks like it. Survivors from failed colonies, refugees, maybe even kids born after the fall." "How long have they known?" Tora's voice was dry. "Long enough to study them." A cold fury built in my chest. I wasn't surprised. Not really. But knowing the Varn had hidden human survivors, studied them like animals, it brought a fresh wave of hatred I didn't think I had left. "They're breeding us in cages," I muttered, trying to figure out why we fight the way we do. "Maybe they want to copy it," Tora said. "Or destroy it," Marn added. I clenched my fists. "No," I said. "They're afraid of it." That's when I knew what had to happen next. Velthora had been justice. Lurexis 3 was strategy. But the Nidus Cluster? That was personal. "Prep the long jump drives," I said. "We're going dark." It took 6 days to reach the edge of the cluster. Most of our fleet couldn't follow. Too big, too traceable. We left them scattered, ghosting through back channels, scraping off IFF tags and swapping cores. We weren't bringing a war party this time, just the fast, the quiet, and the brutal. 30 ships, elite strike crews. Every one of them hand-picked. We slipped through the void like whispers. The first planet was small, shrouded in dust storms and electromagnetic interference. The Varn called it Kirellin, but that's not what mattered. What mattered were the signals we picked up. Human comms, weak, fragmented, like old memories played on a broken radio. We dropped fast. The planet had no cities, just bunkers, underground cages, tall metal spires that crackled with energy fields meant to keep people in, not out. We breached the surface under cover of the storms, our ships masked by static, our approach unseen. I led the ground team personally. We broke into the first bunker with plasma charges. The door cracked open, and for a second, everything was still. Then came the noise. Not screams, not alarms, just breathing. Dozens of them, thin, dirty. Eyes wide like they'd never seen anything but pain and ceiling tiles. Some were children, some old, all human. One of the women, skin pale from lack of sun, hair matted, stumbled forward and whispered something I'll never forget. "Are you real?" I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. She broke down, sobbing. We cleared the facility within the hour. Every scientist dead, every torturer shot, every file wiped. And as we lifted the prisoners onto our ships, fed them, clothed them, told them Earth had not been forgotten, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid staring up at a blue sky that no longer existed. Pride. But pride is dangerous. Makes you soft. Makes you forget that this war isn't over just because one door opens. Tora found the logs. Varn logs. Detailed experiments. Behavioral analysis. Psychological torture. They'd been trying to understand why humans rebelled so often, why even when starved and broken we still found ways to escape, why we killed gods with rocks if we had to, and that's when we saw the worst part. Some of the survivors weren't just studied. They were altered. Cybernetic implants, neural chains, brain mapping tools designed to strip willpower. The Varn didn't just want to understand us. They wanted to unmake us, and that was unforgivable. We hit the next 2 planets harder. No more stealth, just fire. The facilities burned. The guards screamed. The Varn scientists begged. We didn't stop. One by one, the hidden worlds of the Nidus cluster fell, and each one gave us back something the Varn had tried to erase. Hope. By the time we reached the final site, a black station orbiting a dying moon, we weren't rescuing survivors anymore. We were building an army. They'd tried to kill us in secret. Now we were coming back in the open. I stood in the control chamber of that last station, watching our people walk free for the first time in their lives. Some could barely stand. Some had to be carried. But they all had the same look in their eyes, like someone had woken up a storm inside them. Tora stepped up beside me. "There's chatter from Varn Command," she said. "They're panicking, talking about surrender." "Surrender?" I laughed bitterly. "We're not looking for signatures and treaties." She nodded. "What then?" she asked quietly. "What do we want?" I stared out at the stars. "Remembrance," I said. "We want them to never forget who we are again." She was silent for a moment. Then, with a dark smile, she whispered, "Let's make sure they don't." When word spread that we had cracked the Nidus cluster and rescued survivors, the galaxy reacted the only way it knew how. It panicked. Ships fled border systems. Trade networks collapsed overnight. Nations that once paraded around with polished banners and silver tongues suddenly shut down their ports and locked themselves behind shields. News networks everywhere shouted the same headline: "The humans are alive." But the headline missed the real terror beneath it, because they didn't say we were alive. They said we were coming. We had taken Velthora and Lorexus. We had cracked the cluster they swore didn't exist, and now we had thousands of survivors, half-starved, scarred, hollow-eyed, but standing. And when humans stand, the galaxy has to choose between running or kneeling. And the Varn. They chose something even worse. They chose denial. They called us a terrorist fleet, called the rescues a fabrication, claimed the Nidus Cluster was a rogue faction unrelated to Varn High Command. In other words, they lied. We didn't need vengeance anymore. We needed truth, so we didn't hit another Varn colony next. We went straight for their heart. The Varn home territory. Their capital world. Solstice Prime. A glittering superworld wrapped in silver oceans and golden towers. A city so rich and arrogant that diplomats traveled across galaxies just to stand in its presence. The kind of place that never saw war, never saw suffering. They outsourced that to other planets. This was where their kings lived, their council, their high command. This was where the orders were signed that turned Earth into ash. So that was where we were going. The journey took 2 weeks, longer than we wanted. We had survivors to heal, ships to repair, plans to coordinate. But we kept moving, slowly, quietly, with the weight of a dying species behind us. Some of the rescued humans had never seen stars before. Some had never touched the open air. I saw them standing at the viewport, staring into the void like it was holy. For them, it was the first time the universe had ever given anything back. It was strange watching them. Strange seeing something fragile in the middle of all this steel and fire. Strange realizing that maybe we weren't just killing anymore. Maybe we were rebuilding. One of them, a boy barely 16, approached me in the hall one night. "Is it true?" he asked. "What?" "That Earth is gone." I stared at him. It should have been easy to answer. Simple truth, nothing poetic, but the truth was heavy. "Yes," I said. He swallowed. "Was it beautiful?" I thought of sky, of wind, of oceans and forests and rain hitting glass, of things the galaxy would never understand because they didn't believe we had a soul. "Yes," I said again. "It was." He didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't ask for details. He just nodded, like he already knew, like he'd always known, and just came to hear someone confirm it. And he walked away. That night was the first time since Velthora that sleep didn't come easy. Not from guilt, but from the weight of what was coming. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were the last heartbeat of Earth, and if we failed now, then they were right. We really were extinct. When we reached Solstice Prime, the Varn had a fleet waiting, a wall of ships, gleaming, enormous, covered in blue-white shields that shimmered like liquid glass. Hundreds of war cruisers stretched across the horizon. Their message was simple: turn back or die. Marn stared at the display and let out a low whistle. "That's a lot of metal." "It's a funeral procession," Tora corrected. "They just don't know it yet." I stepped forward, watching the Varn battle group form a semicircle around the planet. Their ships were beautiful, elegant, perfectly symmetrical, designed as if art mattered more than function. The kind of fleet built by a civilization that never expected to fight a real war. We opened comms first. A rare mercy. The Varn Chancellor appeared on screen, pale-skinned, rod-like fingers. Gold sash draped across his chest like a badge of royalty. "You cannot approach this system," he said. "You are violating Galactic Peace Treaty 9. "And you violated humanity," I replied. He flinched, just slightly, enough to show fear. "The existence of your people was unknown." "That's a lie," I said. "You studied us. You experimented on us. You hid us in cages across the Nidus cluster." He said nothing. "Turn over your high command," I continued, "and every officer who authorized the strikes on Earth and its colonies, now. You have no authority to demand such a thing." I leaned in. "We have the only authority that ever mattered. And that is survival. For one heartbeat, the galaxy held still. Then the Varn Chancellor raised his hand and said a single word. Fire. The fleet unleashed hell. Beams of violet plasma, ion torpedoes, rail cannon blasts, all converging on our lead ship, and for the first time since this war began. We smiled. "Bring the shields up," Tora shouted. The first wave hit us like thunder. The ship shook. The deck vibrated. Sparks flew from the overhead power conduits. But we held strong. Our shields absorbed the hits. Then we returned fire. Not with Varn weapons, with human ones. Weapons built from scavenged tech. Weapons forged in stolen shipyards and welded in the dark of asteroid belts. Weapons made by desperate hands haunted by memory. Our return strike shattered their front line. We didn't fire in formation. We didn't follow fleet doctrine. We didn't fight like the galaxy. We fought like humans. Unpredictable, relentless, terrifying. Their ships broke formation first. Their shields couldn't handle the plasma spikes and EMP clusters blended with magnetic flak. Their systems shorted. Their hulls cracked. Tora gave the order we'd been waiting for. "All forward assault groups, break the blockade!" We punched through the gaps. We didn't try to destroy every ship. We only wanted the path through, and we carved it. The Varn fleet wasn't ready for real war. They had numbers, yes. They had armor. They had ships. But they had no idea how to fight a species that refused to die. We cut through the line and descended into Solstice Prime's atmosphere. The Varn capital rose beneath us like a jewel of impossible architecture. Spires of crystal, streets of gold, oceans so clear they looked like liquid light. It was everything Earth never got the chance to be. We didn't come to admire it. We came to break it. Landing craft deployed. Drop pods screamed down in streaks of fire, slamming into the capital. Our soldiers poured into the streets, weapons blazing. The Varn defenders were dressed in ceremonial armor, not combat suits. Shields, not guns. They were ornamental, soft. They had never imagined war would come here. And now war was walking in their front doors. I didn't lead from the back. I was there, boots on their stone streets, weapon drawn, steps echoing through the heart of their shining empire. The Varn civilians clung to the walls, terrified. Some begged, some watched in frozen horror. Some hid their eyes like children hiding from ghosts. Tora pointed towards the central palace. "High Command is inside!" We marched through the golden gates. The palace guards fired weak plasma spears, archaic weapons meant for show. We answered with steel and fire. The doors blew open, and we entered the chamber where the fate of Earth was sealed centuries ago. The High Command stood at the far end, 6 Varn leaders draped in robes and medals. They weren't armed. They were waiting. The Chancellor we spoke to earlier was there. His voice trembled. "We did what we thought was necessary." "No," I said. "You did what was easy. We feared what humans would become. And now you know." He looked around at the soldiers behind me. Humans who had been raised in hell. Humans who had never known peace. Humans who would rather die fighting than live on their knees. "What do you want?" he whispered. I stepped closer. "Not victory," I said. "Not surrender. We want remembrance. You will tell the galaxy what you did. You will tell them why the stars burned. You will tell them why Earth fell. And you will tell them that humanity returned." One of the Varn counselors stepped forward, voice shaking. "And if we refuse?" I raised my weapon. "You won't refuse." For the first time in centuries, the Varn bowed. Not to a conqueror, to survivors, to the last children of Earth, and everyone outside, from the soldiers to the ships in orbit, from the rescued survivors watching from their cabins to the scattered humans hiding in dark corners of the galaxy, felt one truth ripple through the stars like thunder. Humanity was not extinct. We had just stopped running. And now the galaxy would finally learn why something ancient and instinctive had always whispered one truth across every world: never let the humans come. But we came anyway, and we were just getting started. The Varn did kneel. They gave us their capital. They handed over their records, their leaders, their weapons, the whole polished mask of their empire, peeled off in surrender. And for the first time since Earth cracked apart, the galaxy stopped whispering about the return of humans. It started screaming. But you don't stop a war by making your enemy kneel. You don't fix centuries of genocide with a camera and a confession. Because what we found buried in their data vaults proved it wasn't just the Varn. It never was. It had always been bigger. The Varn were only the first to strike. But they weren't the last. They weren't even the worst. They were just the ones who made it legal. The ones who signed the papers and smiled at the podium while our home died. The true rot was deeper. A council of species. An alliance built on silence. Built on the idea that humans were too dangerous, too chaotic, too unpredictable. So instead of waiting for us to become a threat, they made sure we never got the chance. Preemptive extinction, they called it. It had a name. The Sovereign Accord, a treaty written behind closed doors by leaders who shook hands in peace conferences while ordering the death of every human colony in the Outer Rings. It was signed by more than just the Varn. The Solari, the Kuthari, the Glassborn, the Septs, even factions of the old Terran Union who sold us out to save their own skin. Solstice Prime was just a curtain, and we had finally pulled it back. I stood in the center of their palace vault, one hand on the cracked stone map table where their conquests were once drawn, and stared at the last document their chancellor dared to hide. There were coordinates on it, thousands of them, each one marked with a crimson triangle, each one a dead human colony. Some we already knew: Mars, Titan, Europa, Cradle Point. But most were names I'd never heard before. Names no one had ever said aloud. Buried worlds, off-the-record settlements, civilian outposts erased before they had time to broadcast distress. One of them made my chest tighten. Kalim 5. That was my brother's colony, the one we lost contact with before the war really ignited. We thought maybe it was sabotage, a systems failure. Maybe they'd gotten lucky and made a jump into deep space. They hadn't. The file had a video log, surveillance footage. Cold, clinical. The planet burned. From orbit. No warning. No invasion. Just silence followed by fire. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. Tora stood beside me, quiet, eyes locked on the hologram. "They didn't just kill us," she whispered. "They erased us. Like we were never supposed to exist." I turned away from the screen before I broke it. "Get the fleet ready," I said. "We're not done." She nodded, voice flat. "Where to?" I stared at the map again, scanning the hundreds of blinking lights, each one a grave, each one a promise. "Start with the Accord." We didn't announce our next move. We didn't send warnings or threats, no press broadcasts, no diplomacy. We weren't looking for attention. We were hunting. The Sovereign Accord was based on a ringed world called Miriath, orbiting a dying sun. It was a neutral system, heavily fortified, protected by over 20 species, and supposedly immune to outside politics. A sanctuary, that's what they called it. We arrived in silence, no battlecruisers, no show of force, just 30 infiltration vessels, hidden behind dead moons and radiation belts, carrying the best killers humanity had left. We didn't go in loud. We went in like shadows. Their orbital defenses didn't even register us. We moved beneath their radar, crawling through sewer tunnels, mining shafts, abandoned freight elevators carved into the underbelly of the station. Their guards weren't even armed properly, so confident in their untouchable status that they wore robes instead of armor. We made them regret that. I led the breach team through a service conduit lined with humming energy cables. The hallway vibrated with soft pulses, like the station was alive, unaware of the virus crawling through its veins. The council chamber was at the center. Tora marked it on her HUD. 4 floors up. Biolocks on every door, guards outside, security inside. Every species on the Accord will be there. Marn adjusted his blade rifle and grinned. Good. Saves us the trouble of hunting them down one by one. No one laughed. We weren't here for war trophies. We were here for names, for faces, for truth. We burst into the chamber mid-session. The doors slammed open in a blast of smoke and plasma. Counselors leapt from their curved thrones, eyes wide, robes flaring as they stumbled backward. Half of them didn't even understand what was happening. The others recognized us instantly and panicked. One of them, a salary minister with translucent skin and shimmering gills, screamed for security. Too late. We had already hacked the station's defense net. Their weapons wouldn't respond. Their guards were dead. I stepped into the center of the chamber, helmet off, voice clear. You erased Earth. You wrote our names in ash. You made our graves before we were born. They tried to speak, tried to offer diplomacy, reason, deals. One of them, a glass-born noble with crystal limbs and a voice like broken wind chimes, whispered, "It was necessary, for balance." I walked right up to him and looked into his eyes. Was Kellam 5 necessary? His expression cracked. Literally. A fracture ran down his cheek like a spider web. No more hiding, I said. The galaxy will know. We broadcasted everything. Every document, every recording, every death order, every falsified report claiming Earth had self-destructed, every lie told to justify the sterilization of our species. It hit every corner of the galaxy within minutes. The neutral systems, the outer colonies. Even the corporate trade syndicates that once bet their profits on human extinction. Everyone saw, and everything changed. Because while the powerful feared us, the rest of the galaxy, they remembered us. There were species who once traded with humans, who lived beside us, who watched helplessly while Earth fell and buried their guilt in silence. Now they saw the truth. Now they saw the Sovereign Accord not as peacekeepers, but as butchers. We didn't kill everyone in that chamber. Some we left alive, so they could live long enough to watch their legacy burn. That was the turning point. After Miriath, we weren't outlaws anymore. We were a reckoning. Refugees and freedom fighters from every corner of the galaxy started reaching out. Not just humans, not just soldiers, everyone who'd been pushed aside by the Accord's rule, the enslaved. The forgotten, the broken. Our war wasn't just about humanity now. It was about everyone they'd tried to erase. We forged alliances in the shadows. We shared our stolen tech. We taught others how to strike, how to vanish, how to burn an empire down from the inside out. And the Varn? The Varn tried to rally. They called for unity, defense, retaliation. But no one listened anymore. Their control cracked. Their colonies rebelled. Their soldiers deserted. Their politicians fled into exile. The galaxy had seen the face behind the mask, and now they were setting fire to the costume. We didn't stop. Because we couldn't. Because Earth was still gone, and no apology would bring it back. But maybe, just maybe, we could make sure no one else burned the way we did. Maybe we could build something in the ashes. Something that didn't pretend peace meant silence. Something that remembered. War, real war, doesn't always start with a bang. Sometimes it starts with a silence, a hesitation, a single breath where someone realizes the rules are gone, and the fire is coming, and there's nowhere left to hide. That was the state of the galaxy after Miriath fell. The Sovereign Accord didn't just lose a headquarters. They lost something bigger. The illusion of control. And once the illusion shatters, power bleeds out of even the strongest empires like air from a cracked hull. What came next wasn't a coordinated rebellion. It was a collapse. One by one, the cracks widened. Minor species that were once too afraid to speak started tearing down the flags of the Accord. Outer colonies declared independence. Long subjugated systems, the ones the Accord fed on for cheap labor, rare minerals, bioslaves, rose up with stolen weapons and righteous fury, and behind every uprising, they whispered our name. Humans. The galaxy had tried to forget us. Now it was fighting in our name. I should have felt pride, but what I felt was heavier, because the fire we started wasn't just burning the old powers. It was spreading everywhere. We never meant to lead anyone. That was never the point. We didn't want a throne. We weren't building an empire. We just wanted the truth. Justice. A reckoning. But revolutions don't listen to intentions. They listen to action, and ours had been loud. Too loud. We were on a station orbiting a ruined Accord satellite base when the message came in. A planet in the far Shard region, Rin's Fold, had overthrown its Varn overseers. Not unusual by now. Except this time, they weren't just throwing off chains. They were executing entire Varn families. Publicly, children included. Tora stood beside me, jaw clenched. They're using our broadcast, playing our clips during the executions. I didn't answer right away, because I'd seen the footage. Our old war cries were echoing from loudspeakers while Varn civilians, unarmed, screaming, were dragged into fire pits and chemical pools. Humans weren't even leading it. Other species had picked up the torch now, waving it like a symbol of holy war, and we had lit it. "They think this is what we wanted," she said. Marn stood nearby, arms folded, eyes cold. "Maybe it is what we wanted. No one cried when they did that to us." "That's the problem," I muttered. "Now we're starting to sound like them." The silence in the room turned sharp. Tora looked at me. "So what do we do?" I stared out the window at the burning husk of the satellite we'd just torn apart. Its metal guts floated silently in the void like a warning. "We didn't start this fire to become the next tyrants," I said. "Then what did we start it for?" I turned around, slowly, heavily, to make sure no one else ever has to. We knew what we had to do. We had to stop the revolution from turning into a genocide. So we did what no one expected. We went to the Varn. Not the ones who held power, not the remnants of their broken council. We went to the Varn who were left behind. Outcasts, exiles, middle-class families who'd been too far from the core to be part of the Accord's war machine. The ones who were now being hunted. We landed on a refugee transport orbiting Cathari's Fall, a quiet moon planet choked in volcanic ash, where hundreds of Varn were hiding in busted freighters and makeshift shelters. They saw us coming and panicked. Understandably. They thought the Reapers had arrived. But we came with no weapons drawn. We stepped onto their landing deck with our helmets off and our hands open. An old Varn woman, her robe tattered, stepped forward. Her voice was shaky, her breath short. "You already destroyed everything. What more do you want?" I looked at her. Really looked. She had the same eyes I'd seen on the children we pulled out of Nidus cages, hollow, tired, waiting for the end. "I want the killing to stop," I said. Her brow lifted in disbelief. "You came to save us?" "No," I replied. "We came to tell the galaxy you're not the enemy anymore." Tora and her team started building a network. Not just resistance fighters now, but protectors. We redirected supplies, set up secure channels for non-combatant species to escape the collapsing borders of the Accord. We opened our medbays to anyone fleeing the chaos, regardless of species. We started rescuing, not just retaliating. It confused people, even our own soldiers. "What are we doing saving Varn?" one of the newer recruits asked me. "Weren't they the ones who started this?" "No," I said. "The ones who started this were sitting on gold thrones while their neighbors starved. But they're still Varn." "So?" I stepped closer. "You want to win? Then don't become what we fought." His eyes lowered. He didn't argue again. But not everyone liked what we were doing. Some of our old allies, the rebels we armed, the pirates we once worked with, the syndicates who owed us blood debts, they saw our change in tactics as betrayal, and it didn't take long before one of them came knocking. The Red Drift Coalition, a former mercenary fleet that rose alongside us during the first strikes against the Accord, sent us an ultimatum. Stand aside and let the purging continue, or be marked as sympathizers. They didn't understand. We weren't standing aside. We were standing in the way. When they tried to burn a Varn outpost of civilians on Ashari 6, we were already there. The sky split with fire as our interceptors slammed into their cruisers. It was our first real fight against our own revolution. It hurt. We knew their tactics, knew their leaders, fought beside them once, but this time, they weren't warriors. They were butchers, and we made sure they bled for it. After the last Red Drift ship fell, I stood on the ash-covered battlefield beside a wounded human fighter who once flew our colors. He looked up at me, coughing blood, eyes wide with confusion. "You're protecting them?" I nodded. "Even after what they did to us?" I crouched beside him. "If we do it back, what's left of us?" He died without answering. Maybe that was better. The war changed again after that. We weren't just fighters. We were something the galaxy hadn't seen in 1,000 years. Balance. People started calling us by a new name. The Ashborn. Not a nation. Not an empire. Just a force that walked through fire and came out carrying both sword and shield. Our fleet moved like wind. Fast. Unpredictable. Sometimes liberating colonies, sometimes defending Varn outposts, sometimes tearing down Accord sleeper cells, still trying to stir the old flames. And everywhere we went, we sent one message: no more extinction for anyone. But that kind of message doesn't just echo, it attracts monsters. There were still old enemies lurking in the dark, the ones who didn't sign treaties, the ones who didn't wear uniforms, the ones who profited from the genocide, mercenary rings, black market syndicates, vultures who scavenged after every world we lost. They weren't scared of justice, they were scared of irrelevance, so they sent a warning. They hit one of our refugee convoys, the Arkan Cross, 1,200 souls on board, mostly rescued civilians, Varn, salary, a few humans from forgotten colonies, no weapons, no shields. It disappeared. We tracked the signal, found debris, found bodies, but no survivors, and no message. Just one scrap of scorched metal nailed to a drifting hull fragment. 3 words etched into it: "You chose wrong." We buried the Arkan Cross in silence, no funeral songs, no eulogies, just ash and flame and a sky full of burning names. And when it was done, I called the fleet together. We were no longer soldiers of Earth. We were guardians of something new. But the galaxy had to learn. If you spill blood under our flag, if you strike the innocent under our protection, we will find you. We will end you. I turned to the comms officer. "Mark the location," I said. "Trace every jump signal, every black market channel. I want the ones behind this. Alive, if possible. If not, dust." Marn looked at me. His voice was low. "You're not asking for justice anymore." I nodded once. "I'm asking for memory. We found the ones who killed the Arkan Cross. They weren't Varn. They weren't Accord. They weren't even aligned with any species that still claimed flags or borders. They were the Black Spires. The kind of monsters who hide in the cracks of civilization. Smugglers, ex-generals, warlords without uniforms, holding on to stolen tech, trafficking pain across forgotten systems. They didn't kill for belief, or defense, or fear. They killed for business. The Sovereign Accord paid them once, long ago, when they needed someone to clean up the problem of human stragglers too remote or too dirty to handle themselves. The Accord collapsed, but the Black Spires didn't. They just got bolder. When we tore down their paymasters, they turned their ships toward us. They weren't afraid. Not of humanity. Not of revenge. And that was their mistake. We tracked them to the edge of known space, to a broken moon called Dyrix, orbiting a dying star. It wasn't marked on any maps. The only reason we found it was because of a fragment, one of the Arkan Cross escape pods, its logs overwritten, redirected, pulled in by a gravity well the AI swore didn't exist. Tora decoded the distress data, silent for hours before she finally looked up. They lured them there, she whispered. They jammed their distress calls, forced a crash landing, then harvested them. She didn't need to say what she meant. We saw the logs, human bodies in holding chambers, Varn children in crates, salary organs tagged for trade, no survivors, just inventory. The fleet couldn't reach Dyrix. It was too unstable. Starstorms flared every hour, and the gravitational tides would rip anything larger than a strike cruiser to pieces. So we went in lean. One team, Tora, Marn, Rella, our tech ghost, 2 recon units, and me. We landed under the cover of chaos, our ship rocking like it was surfing through fire. The moment we touched down, I smelled it, the scent of profit and blood. We weren't stepping into a battle, we were stepping into a slaughterhouse. The moon's surface was cracked and black, littered with scrap metal, old satellite dishes, rusted mech arms half buried in red dust. The spires didn't bother with beauty. They built with wreckage. At the center of the wasteland, a tower rose. Twisted steel, broken glass, jagged antennas clawing at the sky. Signals bled from its walls, distorted voices, ghost transmissions from ships long lost, screams recorded and looped like background music. It wasn't just a fortress. It was a monument to indifference. We breached the tower at midnight standard time. The outer corridors were empty, not abandoned, just prepared. Traps on every door, pressure mines under loose floor tiles, gas vents disguised as light fixtures. These weren't defensive measures. They were games. We disabled what we could, triggered what we had to. Lost one recon soldier to a gravity blade hidden in the ceiling. No alarms. The spires wanted us to come. Tora swept every room with cold precision. Marn kept his heavy rifle locked forward, finger on the trigger like a priest gripping his cross. Rella found the central database 3 floors in, tucked behind a wall of synthetic bone and plasma-webbed glass. She jacked in and went silent for almost a minute. Then whispered, "They recorded the Arkancross deaths." I felt it in my stomach, a sick, cold knot. "Play it." "No," she said. "You don't want to see this one." I said play it. She did. It wasn't just execution, it was sport. The pod crash, the screaming, the spires walking in slow, deliberate, savoring every terrified breath. Picking people off, talking to them, laughing. Like we weren't people. Like we were stock. At the end, one of the spire leaders, tall, lean, human-shaped but stretched like something grown wrong, stood over a dying boy and said, "Your kind fights hard, but you die just like the rest." I stared at the screen for a long time, then turned it off. "Where are they now?" Rella tapped her pad. "Beneath the main tower, sub-level Omega, sealed. But they've been watching us the whole time." "Good. Why?" I stood. "Because I want them to know it's us." Sub-level Omega was colder than the surface. The walls here were smoother, newer, less scavenged, more crafted, and the smell changed, from dust and fuel to something metallic and sour. Something like fear. They didn't ambush us. They waited. 20 Spire soldiers lined the central chamber, each in a different armor type, each holding a weapon stolen from a different world. They didn't speak, didn't move, just stood there. At the far end of the room, the leader waited. Not the stretched human from the footage. Something else, something worse. Tall, armored in obsidian plates fused with flesh. No face, just a wide, empty mask with dozens of blinking red eyes across the forehead. His voice came out slow and deep, like molten stone dragged across glass. "You've come far, Ashbourne." I said nothing. "Do you feel righteous?" Still nothing. He chuckled. "You came to kill monsters, but we are what your galaxy built. You gave us the rules. We just played better." Marn took a step forward, gun raised. "You're not playing anymore." "No," the Spire leader agreed. "We're ending." He drew a blade, not a ceremonial sword, not a relic, a weapon made from the melted cores of human colony ships. He raised it, and the lights went out. The fight was savage, not cinematic, not graceful, brutal. Blood and bone and flame. They fought like animals, like butchers backed into a corner. No formation, no honor, just teeth and heat and hate. Tora stabbed one through the neck with her side blade. Marn crushed another against the wall with a pulse blast that shattered the spine in 6 places. Rella got cut. Bad. Across the ribs, but kept fighting. Dual-wielding plasma pistols until her arms locked from exhaustion. And me? I went for the leader. He was fast. Too fast. Like gravity didn't apply to him. Every swing of that colony-forged blade screamed with heat. I ducked, rolled, took a hit to the shoulder that fried half my exosuit, but I got in close. Close enough to see the seams in his mask, the flicker in one of those red eyes. And I ripped the mask off. Beneath it was no alien, just a man, a human, twisted, augmented, burned and rebuilt. His eyes were black pits, skin scorched, jaw wired with metal. "You did this," I said. He smiled through broken teeth. "They left me behind, Varn, Accord. You." I stared. "You were one of us." "I still am," he hissed. "Just further along the path." Then he swung again, but this time I didn't dodge. I took the hit, let it sear through my side, and buried my knife in his throat. He gurgled, stared at me, then dropped. The black spires died with him. We burned the tower, left nothing but ash, no trophies, no survivors, no memory, just a warning. You don't prey on the broken and walk away clean. When we got back to the fleet, I collapsed in medbay. 3 cracked ribs, burnt shoulder, infection creeping in. Tora sat beside my bunk, arms crossed, watching the IV drip. "Does it end here?" she asked. "No." "Then when?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know anymore. We had killed the monsters, but we still heard them breathing, in our memories, in the scars, in the faces of survivors who woke up screaming every night because they'd been left behind by the same galaxy now asking for protection. Maybe that's why we kept fighting. Not to win, but to stop others from losing like we had. And maybe that was enough. It didn't feel like a victory. Not after Derek's, not after we burned the last of the black spires and left their ash drifting in the void. The galaxy called it justice. Some even called it peace. But peace isn't when the guns stop. Peace is when the screaming in your head finally quiets down. And mine hadn't. Not once. Since Earth. The war was over, at least the visible part. The Accord had fallen. Their fleets were broken. Their colonies were either rebuilding or begging for protection. The spires were dead. Their hunting grounds turned to graves. The Varn were scattered, half of them hiding, the rest working with us to rebuild what was left. And the humans? We were something else now. No longer a species, more like a warning written across the stars. We had no homeworld, no senate, no borders. But our name? It carried weight heavier than any warship. We were called Ashborn by most now. Children of fire, survivors turned shepherds or monsters depending on who you asked. But deep down, behind the titles, behind the myths, we were just the last of Earth, still figuring out whether we'd saved the galaxy or dragged it down with us. It started on a quiet moon called Haleth 9, a neutral ground where what was left of the galactic powers wanted to meet. A peace summit, not a trap, not a setup. Just talk. A chance to decide what came next. They invited us. We almost didn't go. Tora said it was a waste of time. Marn said it was bait. Rella said if she had to listen to one more alien diplomat talk about shared values, she'd rather eject herself into a black hole. But I went. Because if we didn't show up, they'd decide everything without us. And that's how it started all over again. The room was shaped like a ring. Polished, pristine, sterile. Species from every corner of the galaxy sat around a long arc table, speaking in hushed tones, translators buzzing quietly in the background. I stepped in with 2 guards, worn armor, human markings, not to make a point, just because we didn't wear anything else anymore. The voices died down. Some stood when they saw me. Most didn't. The Varn representative, a young female, shaking slightly, spoke first. "We welcome the Ashborn to the summit." I nodded. Said nothing. A Kuthari delegate, draped in violet fur, leaned forward. "This is a time for healing, for restoration. Perhaps, if the Ashborn are willing, we could discuss reintegration." I raised my head slowly. Into what? The galactic community, of course. Equal seats, shared governance. I chuckled once, cold and low. "You mean the same community that signed a death sentence on my species before I was even born?" A few looked away. Some lowered their eyes. The Kuthari cleared their throat. That was the past. "No," I said. "That was history, and history doesn't get buried under words." A salary diplomat, voice watery, broke in. "Then what do you want, Commander?" "What do we want?" They all leaned in, just slightly. I took a breath, and I told them. "We don't want a seat at your table. We don't want a capital. We don't want a monument carved in metal and lies. We don't want compensation for a planet that no longer exists. And we sure as hell don't want to be managed." A beat of silence. I continued. "What we want is truth. In your books, in your history, in the way your children are raised. We want the next generation of every species to know what happened to Earth. Not the sanitized version, not the necessary purge narrative, the real one. We want every system to teach what genocide looks like, starting with the one you committed, starting with us. And we want access, not for weapons, not for trade, for watching. You want peace? Then we'll be the shadow behind it, not kings, not conquerors, just the last species in this galaxy that remembers what it's like to be erased. And if anyone tries it again, we'll remind them." A long pause. No one spoke. The salary delegate whispered, "That's not peace." "It's the only peace that lasts," I replied. "Because peace built on forgetfulness is just a countdown. We weren't offering utopia. We were offering a mirror." The summit ended without applause. No one cheered, no hands shaken, no photos. But the terms were agreed to. History would change. Curriculums rewritten. The Ashborn would be recognized, not as citizens, but as witnesses. A new branch of intergalactic law was formed. We were given authority to intervene anywhere we detected signs of systemic extermination, ethnic cleansing, or preemptive species regulation. They didn't give us that power because they trusted us. They gave it because they feared what would happen if they didn't. Over the next few months, we sent envoys, not soldiers, to old Accord worlds, helped rebuild some, monitored others, quiet, unseen. We weren't trying to lead a golden age. We were making sure no one buried the ashes under marble again. I spent most of my time moving, station to station. Moon to moon, never staying long. I didn't belong in one place anymore. The survivors from the Nidus cluster had started a colony of their own, far out past the old rim, on a world they named Requiem. They asked me to visit. I refused. I didn't deserve peace. But I sent help. One night, alone in a decaying hangar on a ship we stole 5 wars ago, I stood beneath the stars and let the silence take over. And I thought of Earth, not the burning, not the last broadcasts, not the fall. I thought of the smell of rain, of old music playing through static radios, of arguments over dinner tables, of sunburns, streetlights, first crushes. I thought of everything they tried to delete, and everything we carried anyway. That's what made us human. Not our weapons, not our vengeance. Memory. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since I was 12 years old and the sky split open above our house, I let go. Of rage, of grief. Not because I forgave, but because I'd finally finished the story. The galaxy spins on. There are still wars. There are still liars. But now, when a new species emerges, when a new power rises, they're told the truth. About the humans, about the purge, and about what happened when they came back. The old systems call us ghosts. Some call us monsters. But every time someone whispers our name in fear, a child somewhere asks, why were the humans feared in the first place? And they're told. Not with hate, not with pride, just with memory. They prayed we wouldn't come. And we did. Not as conquerors, but as the last reminder that you don't get to erase a people and sleep peacefully ever again.